We are recording. Good afternoon, everybody. We have no printer available to me today for some reason. It's something, a security thing. They aced me out of it. So I'll see if I get that solved by break time. And if we do, I'll have a handout or two for you, one of which will be the syllabus itself, but this is the syllabus. And there's a couple important things for you to know about the syllabus, and I'll go through those today. We have some business to discuss. We have a few things that are coming up, one of which is, this is the only class this week. I think you all know that. The college is shut down for fall break, they call it. Not sure what that means at Dixie Tech and St. George, but anyway, we're not going to Daytona or anywhere. I mean, we're kind of off on that. That was back in the day. St. George used to have one heck of spring break and fall breaks. Anybody remember those days? You know,
everybody would be off at the same time.
Everybody was off at the same time statewide.
The boulevard.
The boulevard was a place to be. It was even fun for guys that went in school. It was just fun to check out and see what was going on here. The cops usually rented an empty warehouse or office or two on the boulevard or on Tabernacle, where they were the holding cells for people they arrested. You know, it was quite an enjoyable little party, but somehow our city fathers decided they'd rather send everybody in their wallets to Pensacola, Florida for spring break, and so St. George died. That's, I suppose, good for people that don't like a party, but the people that like a party, we lost out a number of years ago. But anyway, our fall break is Thursday and Friday. So I know that businesses have to work, so I'm mixing work and pleasure. I'm going to Lake Havasu, and we'll see what kind of thing they got going there. I'll report back and let you know. What I do know is you need to know where the state line is at between California and Arizona. That part I've heard. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll report back when I see you next Tuesday. So don't forget, don't accidentally come to school. It will be locked down. There will be a sign on the door that says we're on fall break. So save yourself the trip. But if you do it, text me, let me know. I'll give you some brownie points for having made the trip. Perhaps somebody that's not in class right now didn't hear the message. So I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want anybody to arrive here. We have a interesting assignment. From my point of view, it's interesting because it's something the whole college gets involved in, and it fits right in what we're talking about in project management here. The campus every year has a little thing on before Halloween where they ask departments to carve up a pumpkin. And they've had all kinds of entrants over the years that I remember. A lot of them have to do with the department that they're in. Like medical will have a pumpkin with, stethoscope in its ear, an EKG printout on it, or who knows what. And the machining guys have machined the pumpkin and machined parts to put in the pumpkin, and automation guys have made the lights and music go on and spin and stuff like that. I don't know what a strategic management program really does to a pumpkin, and that's not what I'm as concerned about as making a project out of it. We talk about projects, and this is a project assignment that I am going to assign to you today. You'll have a little bit of a start with your team. We will have teams. I've got pumpkins in the back that I brought in. You can select your pumpkin and hope it doesn't rot in 20 days, or however long it is between that and Halloween. You don't have to start processing your pumpkin. I'm just going to let you pick one, and you can take it with you. Your team can have a conversation by text or Zoom or whatever your choice of conversing is on Thursday instead of coming to class. If you want to talk about what your ideas are. When you Google pumpkin carving, you see all kinds of fancy stuff from people that made the Mona Lisa in a pumpkin to, rather crude stuff too. And crude is fine if it's funny and I don't get kicked out of the school. so whatever your team comes up with, we will be having a contest here. We're going to have 6 pumpkins that are here with the class. And you will do your best with those. We'll decide if one of them we want to enter into the schools competition. I don't care whether we do or don't. What I care is that you do a project here and that we understand how your project unfolded. And we're going to talk about some things that you need to do in a project, and one of you will be the project manager of your team. And so 6 of you will serve in the role of project manager. And this is a design build kind of a project. And you hear those terms used in construction. If you've hired a contractor to do something, sometimes it's called a cost plus, sometimes it's called design build, and those kinds of projects are different. But a design build has to do with, we're going to come up with the drawings, you're going to approve what it is that we're going to make, and then we are going to build it for you. And so when I do a design build, because I want a shop built, I don't want to get into it, like how far the spacing should be on the materials and or the joists, and I don't want to have a big discussion about metal roof versus slate roof or whatever other kind of choices you have here in Southwest United States. I want the design build guys to design something that they recommend and then propose it to me, and as the stakeholder, the person with the wallet, I want to decide what it is I want them to build after they have designed it. So design is a project all by itself, because there's a chance I won't even want to fire them before they build anything, right? Because maybe they don't deliver on the design. Maybe they weren't listening to what it was that I wanted. Maybe what they produce is harebrained, and it's evident to me they've never designed anything before. And sometimes, you know, we make those mistakes on a grand scale. Somebody designed this campus, this building, these set of buildings with no loading dock and no place for garbage dumpsters. Can you believe that? The company's called Method Studios. They're in Salt Lake. They've designed a lot of college campuses. They're a big company. They got good people. And then it was built by, this one went out to bid, it was built by Leighton Construction. And through those 2 handoffs, nobody said, anybody got to deliver anything in a truck? You might need a loading dock. I mean, even including the pizza oven that we got downstairs, we couldn't take delivery of that, right? You had to go through all kinds of gymnastics to take delivery of stuff. The garbage guys come up and say, where do you want the dumpsters? So we built a place for them after the building was built, right? So it's like, design isn't a given that we're going to do it well or we're going to do it right. And I'm not dissing, this is a nice campus. It's well built. In retrospect, we can look back and we can say, Mahomes should have thrown that pass, last night. But he did. Well, so he happened to win anyway, but that was lucky, right? Yes, so design is a project, and you're punking, the design of what you're going to do is a project. And you need to get the consensus of your team on its appropriateness, its feasibility, cost. That's because that's going to be up to you. I don't want you to spend any money. If you choose to spend some money, that's on you. If you want to borrow tools, we have a shop that's full of tools over there. Let me know or go talk to them. We will be happy to see that you get access to tools. If you want to put it up in a CNC mill and machine your pumpkin, you can do that. I've seen them laser cut. I've seen them, don't plasma cut it. I've seen that. That's pretty cool. It doesn't make for a very good end product. So the design part is first, and then after you have the design part, now you got to build it. And so Method Studios in building B, the building we've had classes, some of you have been with me in classes in the building across the alley. That building has on the second floor something called a floating floor. You heard me. The floor I'm standing on is floating in that building. It may in this one, I don't know the answer to that. But I know for sure in that one, it is. I saw it on the plans. I go, what is this? How does that work? What's going on with this? I talked to the guys at Leighton, and they go, yeah, we've never built one of those. And I go, Leighton Construction, they built the Salt Lake Airport. They've built a lot of stuff. They're a legit builder in Utah. Depending on the year, they're the #1 contractor in the state of Utah. And so they're telling me they never built a floor like that. And when I'd sit at the teacher's podium, I always had fun with dropping a ball bearing or a golf ball and seeing which way it was going to roll today. And what I learned was that as the building heated up on the west side of the building, the tilt on the floor changed. I would tend to roll backwards to the chalkboard or to the whiteboard but the floor is a floating floor and it is moving. And the reason behind that is they say it's better than an earthquake. And it might be. I don't know. I'm not an architectural engineer. I'm not qualified to weigh in on whether it is better or not. I like kind of sometimes when the first thing is built of something. Nobody's ever done this before. It's cool. And when it's state of the art, Elon Musk, for just a side note, we've talked about business quite a bit in this class because it's a business class. Elon Musk has a philosophy. Those of you that have studied him and like what he does in some of his Boring Company and Tesla and SpaceX and those companies that he deals with, if you notice, Elon Musk does not file for patents. He doesn't give a crap. He says, here's his statement. He goes, if you want to copy what I'm building today, I better be building something better by the time you figure out how to do that. And if I'm not, you ought to patent it. Law firms say that he saved millions of dollars in costs of having teams draw up patent applications and applying for patent and paying fees and having law firms doing nothing but working on patents. Now, I'm not teaching that as a great idea. I don't know. But it's an interesting one that Elon Musk is doing it that way. He does own some patents that he's bought. He's acquired companies and divisions that owned patents, so by default he owns them now. But he doesn't go out and patent his stuff. And he doesn't and he is loud about that. He says, I better be moving so fast in our development that by the time you copy the front right wheel motor on the Tesla, we got a better one that's making more torque and more speed. And so far he's right. So far he's saved the cash, and people have tried to copy him, and people are trying to copy him, and at some point in time the Tesla will be leapfrog. We all know that will occur. And it may be purposeful, because it may be that complete artificial intelligence is there. Maybe we have a whole different method of propulsion. I don't know what it will be. All I know is it's changing fast, and we're watching it as it's happening. But that's an interesting side note. So on your team, the design is step 1, and the feasibility of building it is step 2. So if you design a floating floor for your pumpkin, that's awesome if you can build it, because you got to build it. So design and build. Design means you've come up with a cool idea that you all agree on how you're going to do something. And there aren't very many rules on this. You can paint it if you want to paint it. You can stack them if you want to stack them. You can buy satellite pumpkins at Smith's if you want to do that. They can be twins. You can put stuff in there. You can cook in it. All I know is that I lit one on fire one time. I got thrown out for that. So don't light it on fire, even though that's pretty cool. When you do, don't do that one. They'll throw that out. If it smells super bad, they might throw that out too. I don't know what kind of folks they are. But I won't if it's in this classroom and it smells bad. That's okay. If that's part of your game plan and the rest of the team in the room feels like you've got a good idea, a great idea, the winning idea. All right, I'll give you a more definition on that assignment before class is over today. It's just a heads up, that's where we're headed. So I want you to be able to kind of group together, get some ideas. I plan on allowing a little time in class where you kind of have a kickoff meeting with your team and kind of have some discussion about what your thoughts are, what your ideas are. At that time, you can just Google away and see what other people have done. You can copy what somebody else has done. It doesn't have to be patented, in my opinion, or infringed. Infringement is okay if you copy somebody else's idea here. We're not selling anything and making a profit. We're just having a good class. So here's the syllabus that I will pass out to you as soon as I get access to a printer. There's no surprises on the syllabus. It's what we've been talking about. It's the class you've been in. We're on class 3 of the course. what I want to go to is these assignments. These are the assignments that you are going to have in the course, in the span of this course. And I'll talk a little bit about them. There's only 6. A couple of them are good sized assignments, or they will be when I finally lay them out to you, but they will be on Canvas, spelled out. I'll give you handouts on them. The first one, the good news is the first one you've done. That was what we did in class together, looking at earned value management. Remember, that was a term that was new to some, and we started getting our arms around earned value management. We're not done with earned value management by any means yet. You will include it in the Scrumia project, the Agile Scrum that you will do. That project is a project you will have teams that you do that. You each will have the role at some point during that project of the Scrum Master, of which we've not defined yet in this classroom, but we will. Before that, you've got the second assignment is the one we just described, where you're going to carve a pumpkin with your team, and you're going to design it and carve it and build it. So it may have wheels on it. It may have, a spinning hat. I don't know what it's going to have on it. That's your team to define and come up with. But that one will be, you'll present as a team what your process was when you present your finished pumpkin on the 18th. So that's 18th is a week from today, right? On the 18th, you will. Is that right? Yeah, that is right. So you will have it done by the end of class next Tuesday. So 9 o'clock is the soft deadline. The hard deadline is for the school, the one we select and give to the school if we do. Their hard deadline is at 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, but we don't have class till Thursday night. So our hard deadline is end of class on Tuesday, and then we'll take whatever we choose and we'll give it to the school and keep it in good keeping. Refrigerated if need be. I don't know what your project's going to look like. So that's what that project is, and by the end of your build, it may be on Tuesday, and it may be on Thursday's class that you present the summary of what you did. So I'm not giving you a deadline to present on Tuesday. I'm giving you a deadline to have it done at the end of the day Tuesday, and then your presentation can happen on Thursday as to the process you went through, kind of a report, a project management report. We always have a debriefing on a project management. We grab that from the military. The military never goes into action without having an after-action debrief. The after-action debrief is where we learn what went well and what went wrong, and how do we never have that happen again, kind of thing. So the military, so we borrow that in business. We do it when we go on a sales call. We do it when we make a presentation. We do it when we launch a new product. We do it when we buy a new piece of equipment that does something new that we haven't done before. We have after-action debriefings where we talk about, you may not call it an after-action debriefing, but it is I call them autopsies half the time, because you really want to know what happened, because they don't all go well, right? And so if it doesn't all go well, you have an autopsy. Go, what went wrong? How come the patient died? Or we didn't get the deal, or it went wrong, or we didn't make the deadline, or we came out with a cost overrun. What went wrong? That's an autopsy. And it's a thing where people understand the purpose of that is not so they get fired. The purpose of that is not so they get beat up. The purpose of that is for the unit, in military terms, for the unit to learn what went wrong. Whether it was a command decision that was bad, you got to own it if you are in charge. If it was a execution tactical error, something went wrong that way, we needed to understand it so we don't get into that mess again. Putin is having a few of those right now. We're seeing troops that are fatigued, and we don't know what to believe of the news feeds, of course, but but of what we are seeing there, there's problems within the Soviet army or the Russian army. And what that means for us globally, I have no idea. I'm not weighing in. It's not a political comment that I'm making, just an observation from what we're seeing in the news feeds. And so that live involvement with management, with what's going on the front line of a project, is critical. And if your project is as big as invading the Ukraine, it's even more critical, right? You've got human lives at stake and world power at stake. And so, executing that badly, which was what we've seen, that's not okay. And that's not okay for, anyway. So, more projects. We are going to have evidence of a project gone bad. You all will have the same data, the same evidence, and you'll play detective on that project, and it's a pizza organization. It's a software company that's developed the charge was to develop a website that would be flawless ordering online. And they're not the first ones to develop it. Flawless ordering online, or at least ordering online, is pretty well developed by a couple of the companies that are out there right now. They've spent a lot of money getting there. And so we are going to look at a failed project, and we're going to have discussion about that failed project, and that will be one of the assignments. There will be a presentation. We'll be in different teams. You're not going to be in the same team every time, but you will work on this together with another team. The midterm exam is going to be the Scrum Master. We will then do some practice exams that will be, they'll be open book, they'll be take home, and some will be in class, but they will be an example of those of you that want to sit to take the PMI national certification. There are several of you in the room that have stated that you'd like to do that, so we want to make sure that you've got the tools to do that, and we have some conversation about the kinds of questions that you'll get. We'll have some practice, and that will be one of the assignments, and that's a learning assignment as well, because we weren't going to talk about 100% of it in class. One of the samples that I have is 745 questions. Now, we're not going to go through all 745, but you might if you're going to take the exam. So that's your call to take a look at them. And by the way, these aren't mind-numbing questions. They're after you master what it is that we're trying to do. They're common sense questions, but they'll use some terms like Scrum. We've been using that, and a story, and we've used that in life, but we haven't used it in project management. What does it mean here? So we'll be discussing all of that stuff. And so as you make various presentations, I'll be checking you off as you give those presentations, so you've got you get some credit. And that's really all we have from an assignment point of view in this class. This isn't heavy on tons of homework and go read the chapter, go read that chapter, go read that chapter. I don't think that benefits any of us. If you are a reader and you want to do that, you'll do that. If you want to listen to it on audiobooks, you will do that. If you need some help in getting connected with the right audiobooks, let me know, and I'll see if I can weigh in and help. But this is the syllabus, and there are a couple of dates that you already know. We've already had one of them, 10/13. That's this Thursday coming up. That is a day off. Thanksgiving Day is also Thursday, and I've elected not to teach on Thanksgiving Day. I don't think any of you should be here. You should be off with the people that you care about the most, and that's an official Dixie Tech holiday as well. And so we won't be having class on Thanksgiving Thursday, but we will be having class on Tuesday of that week. So leading up to some of you, if you've got family vacations or travel that you're able to do, just let me know what it is and what to expect, and we'll see that we get you covered while you're gone. So that's kind of what to expect. And December 20 is our equivalent of Christmas Day, because that's our last day of class. So that is what to expect from the syllabus. If you have questions about anything that would be syllabus related, please let me know, and we'll address it. Additionally, we have, this assignment that I haven't passed out because I don't have access to the printer yet, but it says, this is the pumpkin designing, carving, and building contest. But there's a few things on here I want you to be aware of or see anyway. So notice that there are 3 ing words in the assignment. Designing, carving, building. Now, your building could be, you just set it on the table, and all of your work is in the carving. It's okay. But you might put legs on it, or arms on it, or a head on it, or who knows what you'll do to it. That would be the building component. And when you go online, you'll see you're not the first one to think of this challenge. So there's lots of stuff online that's out there. Some of it's just crazy cool, and some of it you want to replicate or give it a shot anyway, or try it. But there are 3 elements of this project, and I would expect those 3 elements to be addressed by your project team. The design is a phase that you will start today. You will carry on with plans on that on Thursday, where we don't have class, but you'll connect with people on your team and have it. You don't have to do it on Thursday, but in that gap period, you'll connect with your team and make sure you're on the same page and you've got good plans. If you need a head start, you can do that over the weekend. One of you can take custody of the pumpkin and do work on it. And I will never know if all of you on the team buy more pumpkins for more trials at it. They're not labeled RFID, serial numbered, or anything. It's a pumpkin. And so if you kill the goldfish, you can buy your kid a new goldfish, and they probably won't know. I say that because I think that almost every class has at least one dad that did that somewhere along the line with their kids' goldfish. So the pumpkin could be replaced. If you mess up, it's okay. You don't have to tell me. You tell your teammates probably, but you don't have to tell me. Get another pumpkin for $5 in town. But in previous years, all the grocery stores ran out of pumpkins, just like they ran out of toilet paper. So I don't know the pumpkin supply, how long it will last in St. George. So if you think you might need a backup pumpkin, that's on your own decision as a team if you want to do that or not, or if you know a garden where you can borrow one if you need it, and if you need a backup. So the building part is whatever you decide as a team it's going to be, and that could be a short project if you decide there's really not much you're going to do to build. You're going to stick pipe cleaners in, and you're going to have whiskers on the cat that you carve. So that's your you know, you need to talk about it, what color they are, where they come from, where they went in. And do you have a sketch of that? Do you have, that's a project that's not ad hoc. This isn't one you're doing by yourself. Where when you're cooking by yourself, you can look in the kitchen and you can just start freestyling, right? You can see what's there, and you can check a recipe, and then you see you don't have that, but you got this, and you throw other stuff in, and great chefs and cooks are really good at doing that. Great jazz players can play without music, right? But for a project management project, we've got to document all that stuff. We can't freestyle beforehand. We have to talk about pipe cleaners, where you got to put them in. Now you can do R&D, and you can even plan for R&D. We want to spin this, yes? You stretch it? Sorry about that. Wow. I'm a little bit more alert than I thought I was. Didn't realize that. So, I will expect your presentation to cover those three phases of this project. Now, all projects are not going to have all those phases, but many do. If you are a plumber and you're putting plumbing in a new house, you have an underground phase that you put in the drains and you put in the access water, and then you leave and let the builder do whatever he does, and then you come back and do another phase. The house is now framed and built, and you're running water in the studs and in the house. So there's different phases, and now you leave again, and then you come back after the walls are finished and electricity's on and all that stuff, and you hook up the faucets and you install them. That's finished plumbing work done. So it's 3 phases of the project of plumbing a house. So some projects naturally are divided into phases like that. Others really aren't. You have to look at it. That's what you are doing as a project manager, is you're weighing in and deciding what is appropriate for your project. And one of the words that we read the other day was the word tailoring. And tailoring means that you're customizing your project to your specific needs. The steps to follow in successful project management are simple. If you stick to them, you can apply them in any situation or task that needs to be organized and managed, including carving a pumpkin. There are many different versions of the process of managing a project. In its simplest form, project's life cycle contains the following steps. For this project, these are the steps I want you to follow. I will print this when I get access to a printer, and in the event that I don't, you might take a picture of that. It's posted on Canvas as well. But, let's go through step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Shows you step 1.
Identify the projects including the scope of the project.
Okay, so the problem is we've got a pumpkin that is a blank slate. And you've got a task and a challenge, and you're competing against the other teams in this room. So that is the problem. What is the scope of the problem? How would you think about that? You're gonna ask this question amongst your team members, but for right now, how would you answer that question? What's the scope of the project?
Winning first place? I mean, I guess that would be the outcome, sorry.
Win it all, right? It just started at the beginning. The scope is, the end of the project is when we win. That's the end of the project. So that would be, that's not wrong as an answer. The scope of this project, though, has very definite deadlines, because November 1st, your pumpkin's not going to be of any value in this class or to the college. You've missed it. You might have a beautiful one, but in which case, put it on Etsy or something. See if you can get something out of it, but because it's not going to be of value here. So the scope of it has to do with who's involved, the team, who's available, resource-wise, and you decide that. Whether you draw from outside this room, that is based on your ability to persuade. If you've got a 12-year-old kid that's good at this stuff, and you can bribe them in some way to participate, that's not against the rules. That's not outside the scope of the project. You aren't limited to the team members that are on your team here. You're welcome to recruit others as long as your team agrees to that. That's not how it does for us. Within the scope of the project, you're welcome to use any tools you have access to. So you're not limited to, a pocket knife or a Leatherman or, a CNC lathe. You're not limited to any particular tool. You do not have a requirement that the pumpkin be completely emptied of every seed and of every pulp. We don't have a definition of how thick the material needs to be remaining. It just needs to be identifiable as a pumpkin still, or whatever your creation is. Number 2.
Determine the outcome you'd like to see.
Okay, that is going to spin right off the scope. The outcome you like to see, Andrew already said, we're going to win this thing. And by the way, you can win this thing. We're going to have 6 pumpkins in the room, or 5, depending on how many people we got, and one of them will win in the room. Now, as far as the college is concerned, that's a higher tournament, I suppose you could call it. Then, number 3.
Delineate all the tasks in detail of what's required to start the project management plan.
Okay, this is the stuff before you cut the pumpkin up. This is the stuff that you plan to do before you actually start doing, right? So you've talked about and you make the plan. Where is the end of the plan?
Presentation?
It's the presentation of what you did after the whole thing is over. I didn't expect anybody to get that one. I thought it would be when we, ta-da, here's our pumpkin. It's not. It's after we've got the documentation, the presentation, and the summary, the after-action assessment of what we got done. Did we have a cost overrun? Did we make the deadline? That reporting that will happen, that's when the project is done. So the management plan covers from today to then. And the level of detail at this juncture is up to you guys. It should be enough detail in order to know what's required to start the project management plan. Okay, the next, number 4.
Identify the players or the team members and assign responsibility identifying any risks or external parties that can influence the outcome.
Okay, a risk is what happens if you got a nearly rotten pumpkin now. I don't know what the expiry date's on all of them. I bought them an hour ago at Harmon's. So if you need a warranty thing, go back to Harmon's. But there may be other risks besides that. Pumpkins do go soft. Seems like the ones that are on my neighbor's porch every year last till like Valentine's Day or something. I don't know. They seem to last a long time. But the ones that I count on seem to go soft real quickly and are hard to carve or cut. And so, that's a risk. What other risks are there? Accidents. You got it carefully seatbelted in the back of your truck. And on the way home, you put on the brakes and something bad happens to the pumpkin. And so there's risks I need you to talk about and decide what's your plan, what's your risk management plan that you have in place. Do you have a backup? You don't have to say, well, we're going to build 2 side by side, and you're going to take one, I'm going to take the other. If you want to, you could do that, right? But you need a backup plan. The backup plan may say, okay, Steve's got to go find another pumpkin if we have a problem. That could be the extent of the backup plan. Number 5. Joel.
Decide on a timeline for completing each part of the project so that you can create a project schedule.
Okay, timeline starts now, and you have a hard deadline, 9 a.m. on Thursday, but the class deadline is 9 o'clock at night, October the 18th. So 1 week from today, into class. And we're only going to have today's class, which time I'll give you a little bit of time to have a conversation. And then on Tuesday, you can actually do construction on Tuesday. The class will be kind of a fluid class. I have things to present that if you guys are all done on Tuesday when class starts, because you did it on your own at some point in time, that's okay. I will teach. If not, we will work together. Plan on spending some time in class working on your pumpkin project. Okay, that is, and so we need a project schedule, and that's up to you. I'm not forcing you to do homework in this class. It's just up to you and your team and your project of who wants to do what when. And if you have one person in your team that's doing all the work, and you have slackers on your team that are doing none of the work, how should you handle that?
Confront them.
Delegate.
This is welcome to a normal project, right? Normal project, you've got one person that's gung-ho and committed and going to make it happen. And you have a couple of slackers that will recognize that and take advantage of them if you allow them to do that. Now, this isn't a punitive setting, but one of the things that is a tenement of project management is we have to figure out how to get stuff done from people that we can't fire. We have people like this all the time. And in electricity, we simply call it the path of least resistance. Electricity is going to go to ground on whatever the easiest way is to get there. If it's through my body, it's how it'll go. That's just what it's going to do. And some people are going to take the path of least resistance always. And it's our task to figure out how to engage them, how to get their help, how to get their commitment, how to get their delivery of whatever it is that you as a team can get them to contribute and or need them to contribute. So this is something that will be an assessment, excuse me, in a small group. This is hard to do. So my hope would be that voluntarily, none of you will choose to be a slacker testing your project manager. There are many methods of handling that. One method that's an interesting one is what I call a shootout clause. And we see that in buy-sell agreements and partnerships. Quite often the attorneys call it a shootout clause. And in project management, we have a shootout clause that's sometimes used where two people are named project manager, and you can appoint the one that's not doing anything as a project manager on a moment as a team. And that's risky because you're taking the person that's not committed and putting them in charge. But sometimes that works. And it's a technique we'll talk more about. It's one of the tools that this is a problem with projects always, is how do you get equal work out of people? And the facts are you're never going to get equal work out of people. We can't in the plant, we can't in the family. You can't get two kids to get equal work on a Saturday project in the garage. It never will happen. But fair contribution is something that we are trying to go for as we get our teams harnessed up and focused on a project. Hopefully the stakes are always going to be bigger than a pumpkin. But today it's a pumpkin. And so we tried to lock you out, but we didn't quite pull it up. I should prop that open because it got me too. I stayed there for a while, didn't come in here. But it was okay. Number 6.
Review the outcomes, revise tasks as required, and give any further direction once you've completed the project.
Okay, this is for 2 weeks from today. This is the Tuesday presentation where you have a chance to make comments about that. You can talk about what in this little project with not much time and not much resources, how it went, and kind of talk about where you missed the timelines. Because timelines, you don't have a lot of timeline, and it's not fair for you to say, all right, take all day Saturday and do this. I don't want you to have to do that. I want you to be able to split it up successfully between launching it, having a little bit of homework, and finishing it up on Tuesday week from today. We all together on that assignment. I apologize for not having it in a handout yet, but we'll get there. All right, we've got a couple of catch-up videos that we need to look at regarding some of the factors that are in Agile. And I want us to talk about, I want us to watch a couple videos on them before we talk about them to kind of get a reference scope, if you would. Scrum is one I want to talk about first. Take a look at a video on Scrum, and we'll define it better in a little bit. But I want us to look at this. This is 15 minutes. I want us to start out looking at this. This is a presentation, a speech on TED. We've seen a few of those from a guy that spent time at West Point and as an instructor at Stanford, and talking about how to get projects done and projects done correctly, and how to make a difference. And the title of his talk is Scrum: How to Do Twice as Much in Half the Time. And so whether you call it Scrum or not, if I can do twice as much in half the time, I'm interested, because that means I got more time to play. I got more time to do something else that I choose to do. If I can get more done and spend less time to get it done, that's a benefit to everybody around me, everybody that's paying me, and everything that I want to do on my own. So we're going to take a look at this, have a brief conversation about it, and then look at another short video, and then have a wrap up on that before we take a break.
Hello, I'm here to talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, a great American dream that's often not fulfilled. In the words of the poet Robert Burns, the best laid plans of mice and men often go terribly wrong and lead to pain and suffering instead of the promised hope. I first started to wrestle with this problem as a cadet at West Point. We went through a lot of pain and suffering in our training, and in the last year I was there, they made me the training officer for Company L2 because they had a marching problem on the parade field. Company L2 was known as the Loose Deuce because for 100 years they had a tradition of mediocrity, sloppy performance. For decades, people had tried to get them to march longer, train harder, but nothing worked. So I knew I had to do something different. So what I decided to do is I couldn't tell them what to do, but I could put up on the bulletin board at night in color-coded notes exactly how their performance was on the parade field and exactly what they needed to do to improve. You know, Charlie has got to stop sticking his sword in the ground in the middle of a parade. The 3rd platoon has got to turn the corner in synchronization, and the commander has to enunciate his commands crisply in exactly right timing. To everyone's amazement, they became the #1 company in the Corps of Cadets within 3 months. And General MacArthur died at this time, and he had specified there must be a company cadets marching behind his casket to lay him to rest, and L2 was chosen. So for dead last, to putting one of our greatest generals in the grave, was a long journey in a very short period of time. Now I graduated from West Point and I went into the Air Force. While I was at West Point, I learned something from other leaders. I lived in a room that had a plaque on the mantelpiece that said, General Dwight D. Eisenhower slept here. And every time I'd read that plaque, I'd remember his famous quote, plans are worthless, but planning is everything. So when I got to be a fighter pilot, I was in reconnaissance. We did a lot of planning. But one day, one of my fellow pilots, Ed Atterbury, was blown out of the air over Hanoi by a SAM missile. And I said to myself, he did really good planning, but he was flying straight and level over the target. That could get me killed. From that day forward, my plan was to have a vision where the target was, and as soon as I crossed North Vietnam, I went into an evasive maneuver because every second I knew I was being fired at. And only at the last moment would I come up straight level off for a target just for a second to snap that photo. Now I got out of there alive. Over half the people I flew with did not come back from their missions. And when I came back to the United States, it was a big surprise. I had come so close to getting killed so many times, it felt like it was a new life. Every day was like a bonus day, a free day. And what was I going to do with it? So I asked the Air Force to send me back to the Air Force Academy to become trained to be a professor, or back to school at Stanford, trained to be a professor at the Air Force Academy. And from there, I went into the University of Colorado Medical School. I was on the faculty there for 11 years. While I was there, my expertise was building supercomputer models of the human cell and showing how it evolved and multiplied and what caused it to become cancerous, what could make that stop, how do we cure cancer. And while I was there, a big banking company running 150 banks all over North America came by and they said, you know, at the university you have the best expertise in technologies we use at the bank. You have all the knowledge and none of the money. But at the bank, we've got all the money and we don't know what we're doing. You should come work for the bank and it would be a perfect marriage of knowledge and money. And they made me an offer that my wife couldn't refuse, a poor university professor. So I wind up at the bank, and what do I see? I see they're running all these huge projects, hundreds of developers, and they manage all these projects with a Gantt chart. And this is a technology that was introduced to the military of the United States in 1910. It didn't work very well in World War I, and it didn't work very well then, because every piece of the project is lined up with a date. And if anybody misses that timing, the whole project is delayed. And when it gets delayed, the customers get upset, the managers get angry. They would force these developers to work nights, weekends. They go on death marches. It reminded me of the Roman galleons, you know, the slaves rowing. The whip is cracking. But as a fighter pilot, I knew the essence of the problem. These guys could not land a project. You know, we learned as a fighter pilot that we had to very carefully bang that airplane right on the end of the runway. And if we did it, we might go halfway down the runway and slide off the runway into the trees. And that's what they were doing every project, sliding off the runway into the trees. So I went to the CEO and I said, this bank is totally screwed up. If you give me the worst business unit in the bank, I will fix it just like I fixed Company L2. And he said, Sutherland, if you want that headache, you've got it. So I said, okay, I will report to you once a month, to you and the senior management, and the rest of the time, you stay out of my unit. We're going to run this as a little company in a company, like a startup. And so we broke them down into small teams, sales, marketing, installs, engineering, everyone, all working together with team incentives in a collaborative space. And we ran weekly cycles. We began building a backlog of what we needed to do. And I began to show them how to land the airplane. How is it that a pilot can make a perfect touchdown? He has to look at altitude, airspeed, rate of descent, the heading of the airplane, understand the wind and the weather, and every few seconds being adjusting constantly. So every week they would try to land the airplane at the end of the runway. Bang. And week after week they did it. And surprise, surprise, in less than 6 months, that team was the best team in the bank. They had gone from the worst money-losing unit to the most profitable unit in the bank because they made their work visible. The team was given the responsibility to fix the problem, and they self-organized to make it happen. It's all about learning how to land the airplane. Now, from that banking experience, I was asked by a series of companies to come in and deal with tough problems. So I needed to figure out how to do this consistently and get other people to do it other than me. I couldn't be there all the time for everyone. And so I began to think about how would I do this. I was running a little French company in Cambridge, Massachusetts on the MIT campus. And 5 graduate students from MIT came by and they said, we're starting up a company building robots. Can you rent us some space? And I said, sure, we have a couple of extra rooms you can use for a lab. And they were building these insect-like robots. And every other day, the robots would come wandering into my office. They were trying to hunt me down with heat-seeking sensors. And a senior professor at MIT was a co-founder. He would come by on Fridays and he would see how they were doing. And I asked him, I said, Professor Brooks, how do these robots work? He said, Jeff, the first thing you need to understand is that for 30 years, we've tried to build a smart system at MIT, and it's been a total failure. We tried to build this command and control system with really big computers and huge databases, and it didn't work. The best it could do was a smart chess program. So he said, I watched insects, and I wanted to create something that had distributed intelligence, a chip in the leg that can move a leg, a chip in the spine that can coordinate legs, a neural network in the head that figures out where to go. And he turned it on, and the legs flapped, and it waddled to its feet. It was like a baby learning how to walk, and in 3 minutes it was running around the room. I said, wow, that's amazing. I used to have these really slow developers. Maybe we could give them some simple rules, and they would learn how to boot up into a super intelligent team. Do you think that would work? And he said, why don't you try it? Well, I did. A short time later, a company, a very successful company, hired me in to build a new product that was going to replace all their old products in half the time they'd ever done it before. And I had to figure it out. And our product had to be used by really big companies, and I had to tell them how to use the product in an agile way. And we studied the literature, and we found the best paper in the Harvard Business Review, where Nonaka and Takeuchi, two Japanese professors, had shown 3 different styles of leadership. Number 1, the Gantt chart. You know what happens with that one. Number 2, a transitional strategy at Fuji Xerox. And number 3, that what they saw in the best manufacturing plants in the world. So we ran how to implement number 3, and Takeuchi and Nonaka said it needs to be self-organizing, self-motivated teams. Management needs to let go and step back. They need to get out of the way so the teams can figure out what to do. So we implemented that in 1993. By 1995, I got together with my partner, Ken Schwaber. We started rolling it out to industry. In 2001, we wrote the Agile Manifesto. And since then, it's gone everywhere in the world. All the major software companies, they're building fighters, agricultural machinery, space probes. Joe Justice in the picture there is showing a car company how to build a car in 1-week cycles, a new car every week. But the leading edge of this Agile movement today is actually in the schools in the US and Europe. I recently visited a school in the Netherlands where the kids have been trained to self-learn. The bell would ring, they'd come running into the room. Teams of 4, they would run to the wall, put up their scrum boards on the wall. They'd have a short daily meeting. What did we do yesterday? What will we do today? What are the problems that are getting in the way? Run to the desk and start to work. The teacher's just standing there saying nothing. They only talk when they're asked for help. The enthusiasm of these kids was so overwhelming. I'm standing there with other teachers, we're crying. The kids say it's faster learning, better grades, they finish weeks early, they have more fun. There's a definition of fun for everything they do. They make sure it's achieved. The handicapped children are involved naturally in the workings of the teams as team members. The motivation problems go away, the disciplinary problems go away. The team executes self-discipline. If they need a little help from the teacher, they might ask for it, but generally they don't need it. So this is the future of learning. And if you go back into the world that most of us live in, we're not operating that way. The surveys show that most people think work really sucks. The only thing worse at work is being sick in bed. I recently asked a software developer for working on BMW software in Paris how he liked his Scrum team. He started choking up. He started bursting into tears. And he said, I can't tell you the exhilaration I feel. It's changed my life. Every one of you could experience that. You could grab back your power, grab back your freedom, gain a life that's transcendent, and the exhilaration you would feel would give you a happiness that you would remember till your grave. That's what I wish for every person in this room. And you need to give up and let go to make it happen. Thank you very much.
His name is Dr. Jeff Sutherland, and you'll see him on the Agile Manifesto if you choose to look at that. That is the definitive beginning of Agile in project management, and developed by his team the idea of figuring out how you're going to carve your pumpkin by yourself, by your team, not being told from top down, here's the plans, here's what you need to do. Because in something that we call peer-to-peer learning, this is something that I've been challenged with for several years now, since I started reading some papers on the concept. The concept of peer-to-peer learning is that we take 2 4-year-olds and put them in a sandbox, and maybe 4 is the wrong year, maybe it's 2-year-olds at this point, with a Tonka toy, a bulldozer, and a dump truck, and a crane. And they've never seen any of those 3, how they work. Pretty sure by 4 we've all known how to do that. But whatever that age is, put 2 kids that don't know how to run those 3 toys in a sandbox and walk away. They will learn how to operate those toys faster than if I try to teach them. That is humbling for a teacher. What that says is, I can't do squat in terms of helping a child learn something or an adult learn something. All I can do is create conditions where you can learn. And if one of those conditions that needs to happen is to learn from somebody else that doesn't know, which is counterintuitive to everything I've been taught. Learn from experts, learn from the best. I only want to hang around people that know more than I know. And what peer-to-peer learning is, the fastest way to learning is often take 2 people that want to learn, but don't know, and let them discover together. And they will get it faster than if I try to teach them. Well, swallowing that and saying, okay, there we have it, that's true at work as well. Now the stakes are a tiny bit higher at work, because in the sandbox, we don't worry so much. These aren't real trucks. They won't kill them, probably. But safety things have to be understood and taught, right? You can't wait for peer-to-peer learning to figure out what kills us. Here, taste this. Drink that. We need some knowledge base for certain things like that. But in terms of what makes the best project results, could be from having people on our project team that are learning together quickly to the task at hand. Some of you have completed something called the Marshmallow Challenge. Maybe half of you in the room have done it somewhere. Success USA does it. Lots of people worldwide have done the Marshmallow Challenge, and I've done it in classes here. And the Marshmallow Challenge is about, you have pieces of spaghetti and a couple of pieces of tape, and the challenge, and you have a marshmallow. The challenge is to build a tower, and with the marshmallow on top that's taller than anybody else's. And you have 17 minutes to do that in. And so the winning teams worldwide, this has been done by thousands of teams at this point in time. You can Google it and look at it online. The architectural engineers do pretty well with triangles and figuring out how to break spaghetti into structural strong shapes that will allow their towers to be tall. CEOs do fairly well. They're used to running things and making things happen. CEOs with an admin assistant on the team do better. We used to call that a secretary position. That doesn't exist anymore, but administrative assistant does. And the reason they add value, great value to these Marshmallow Challenge teams is because they have figured out how do you get stuff done with people that think they're all that. Because that's what administrative assistants have to deal with a lot of times. They have to get it done. If it goes wrong, it's their fault. If it goes right, the boss takes credit. And they're working in an environment like that where they make things happen behind the scenes. They're able, we call that facilitation skills. Facilitate means to make it easy. They make the projects easy for the people that are gonna take the credit for it. And whether that's right or wrong is an ethics question. I'm not throwing it out here for discussion. Just the fact that that changes the output of the team, a good administrative assistant on the team. But the best teams, you may remember if you've done that in one of my classes, the best teams were the kindergartners. And why is because kindergartner projects are Scrum-based projects. They're iterative. They do it over and over and over again. They start with failure. They don't start with positioning. They start with the marshmallow. And they stick stuff under the marshmallow to see what will make it stand up. And they keep experimenting. The spaghetti breaks and they learn and they get better and better. And kindergartners build taller towers than college kids do. Wow. There's something there to learn for us. So project management, we have the old school where we say command and control, Gantt chart your way away, and we're going to use Gantt charts in this class because we got to keep score somehow of what our progress is. We're going to keep it with earned value and with time frames. But that's not necessarily the way to run the project. The way to run the project might be letting go a little bit. Just carve the pumpkin how you think. Invent something that you think will win. Something that you think will be the best that the school's seen. Something that's cool because of something. Not something that I've told you to do. In fact, something that I haven't told you to do. Something that you've designed and figured out on your own. And Scrum is about those iterative things. Taking a big project and dividing it into tinier and tinier pieces that we can do today. We can do tomorrow. We can do the next day. At the end of the day, we know we've achieved something towards our project goal. When you're taking on a big project like relaying out a plant, that's an enormous project that's not going to happen in a day. So what are the things that need to happen today? That's how you did that. And you're still doing it. You're still looking at things in bite-sized pieces that we can manage. That's what Jeff was talking about with Scrum. The photographs that he talked about taking over in Hanoi, he made that speech politically correct. He was not a photographer, he was a fighter pilot. And his life was at stake. And so the idea of how do you fly in over a target, you better do it Scrum. That means you don't have the plan that says here's your coordinate, go for it. Because Google tells you to go straight for it as the bird flies. That got his buddy shot down. That cost him his life. And so you invent something that's totally non-scripted until you're at target, and that's what he was talking about with Scrum. You stay alive longer, you're more effective in what you do, and he kind of changed with a team, kind of changed the world's thought about how we look at this stuff. And the Project Management Institute has embraced what Agile has been doing in the software world for quite a while. So we're just kind of on the edge of that looking in, right? Right now, we're just looking at that. When you think about, could I do projects for less, faster, would that be a benefit? And the answer is yes, it would be. All right, it's time for break, but before we go on break, I want to do a couple of things. Confirm my count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 here. That's 5 teams of 3. I don't have a preference on how we split up in teams, but I don't want it to become political or a problem. What do you think? I can always count everybody off in the group of count to 5, and those are your teams of 3 people. Or you can select who you want to work with. How do you want to do that? Everybody's quiet because nobody wants to be the last one picked. I think we got that. That's off the table. It's just a matter of logistics at this point of how do we divide up in teams. Some of you work together, and by that proximity, you might have a benefit of being able to communicate more. And if you want to choose to do that, I am not disallowing that. I'm asking the group, we need 5 teams. I've got 6 pumpkins back there. I want everybody's team to choose a pumpkin, and that will be, we'll start our conversation on what you're gonna do with that pumpkin as a team today before you go home. How do we pick the teams? Joel, I'm gonna ask you to call it. How should we pick teams?
Well, I was thinking maybe as hurricane people could do it together since we live by each other.
Okay?
But, so then I would say probably selective, but there are a lot of people in here who don't know each other, so that's gonna be hard for them.
Well, I think that's okay. This is a good chance to get to know each other.
You could do 5 team leads, and then those team leads just pick.
Okay, what
Two
about
other
that?
people.
That's a creative thought. Andrew, what do you think?
Well,
I would prefer that you just assign numbers.
Okay.
Pick our team leads.
Josie?
I don't think.
Just assign.
Just decide. We'll just decide. Brendan, you're 1.
Six.
1.
Oh, I mean one.
2, 3,
4.
3,
4.
5.
Okay, so we have 5 teams of 3. And I was very interested in how you would process it, on the choice matter. Because as we demonstrate leadership skills, sometimes it's right to weigh in with a firm decision. Sometimes it's right to ask the team how they want to behave. And I don't care much how you chose to do this. There's not a right or wrong way on this. It's a short assignment. It's going to be over before you know it. You'll have a pumpkin card, whoopie-whoop. You'll have a check mark as an assignment for the class, but hopefully you'll learn something in the process that you go through with your team. Because there's a written documentation set that goes with this. You need a plan. You need to decide what your design is going to be. You need to have some timelines together. You need to make some assignments of roles of who's going to do what. And you need to keep that documented well enough that 2 weeks from today, you can make something of a presentation to this group. That presentation does not have to be a PowerPoint. It can be, but it does not have to be a PowerPoint. You decide how you make the presentation to give us a report on your project team, 5 reports, 1 for each project team. So we need to know, you need to decide how you're going to govern your team, how you're going to manage it, who's going to take care of the paperwork side of things and spearhead that, not do it all, just make sure it's done, and who's going to take care of the management side of things, not do it all, just make sure it's done, and who's going to lead the design, the idea, the creative thought process of what you're going to do. You have 3 players. Some of you may have more than 1 role. Don't know how that's going to work out. You guys kind of decide. Let's go to break. When we come back from break, feel free to look through the bags and pick your pumpkin out. They are reasonably all the same, but they weigh different. So line them up. There are 6. Pick 5 of them. Take 1 for your team. Maybe write on it somewhere so somebody can't switch your pumpkin out. When you're done with all of that and we're done with the break, we'll convene back in class.
Which way did you say that the bathrooms went?
Either way,
Either way? Okay.
there's a bigger one that way.
Oh, that's the first one. Telling you, that's the one right there.
3? Yeah.
Yep. And, you gotta remind me your names again, I'm sorry. Eric Thomas. Denver, that's right. I'll remember your tape. It's conflict of interest.
But with that, conflict of interest, I am gone Saturday, Sunday, and next Tuesday.
That means you could be like a designer or what you still.
I'm thinking I can present a presentation.
When you start with scared or what it is like, that's graphics management, like work.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Witt, Director of ProjectManager.com.
That'd be cool.
Jennifer Witt, Project Director for
You did?
Yeah, sent them off.
And?
Effectively told her I'm back in for now. So, it is what it is. And then I talked about my upcoming exam would be, and I looked it up online and I found it was $300. Okay, I saw that and I thought that was a lot.
Yeah, that's, I got that from him, but it's, you've got a,
I'm sorry for the project management associate.
okay, that may be different than,
Okay. Yeah, so I got that.
that's done.
Yeah. Yeah, so I responded to him with, hey, I look forward to maybe being included on your review that come up about, you know, creating and procedures for training procedures going forward and the review on those things and then asked him about taking my exam and he shot back and what this was like a single line of can you send me something for my certification? And then I get to one of the assignment.
All right. You have any
That's fine.
Exactly, I'm not trying to play the.
Okay.
You don't wanna play that, because,
Yeah.
but in terms of the value of what it brings to the organization, I do think you should send
Well, I
it to
mean, I think a lot of this can be done,
Institute's website, because that's the,
right?
that's the.
And depending on how,
Just part of
depending on how creative we want to get it, it's something that we can,
Because your measures, you know, I mean, it's
design
quite familiar with that.
tonight
This
and
isn't a fly-by-night group, this is,
delegate, decide on who's going to charter,
um,
that can be done over the weekend, right?
but I don't know, it's, you know, why did he assume that? Does he just want you to go, okay, the product?
Well, right,
Because-
right.
That's what
I think that I might have a traditional, employee, that we can add to the team. My wife is very crafty, she's got a lot of, pretty tools, which I think would be perfect for small things, right? Come on back. Chelsea.
Like them, and so she. In work is hard sometimes. Oh, that's cool, yeah, I need to get my fix.
But yeah, I'm just gonna push it or something, cause I was sitting there, the first email was,
Chelsea.
It's still on. It's still
So
on. I
what
knew
do
that
we
as
want to do?
he's doing
Crazy,
his job,
multiple,
and not just saying yes to
deals
whatever
we
you
want to
say.
get.
And then you come back with the, because he really wanted to have
Design.
Yeah.
and that's not what he wants. He wants to see how you're gonna pitch it, how you're gonna respond, what the value is.
I do know that.
And it's gonna, it needs to be all about what the
Okay.
value is to the company. Yeah, 100% has to be. And that you will be better able to help them drive things on the budget, help them bring things on.
Sure. Unless you want a card, pumpkin.
No, I'm good.
Good? Okay, okay. My wife will.
Now,
We just need to present it.
you have to go around.
That one I just have to say, so. Yeah, I keep hearing.
Leadership kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, you can watch that on YouTube too, because that's, things move, don't move as fast.
Well, our competition is just here with those classes, and then if we win, then we'll be graduated
So
to,
if you put
the whole school, but that's what we're
nothing like that.
serious pumpkin carving
So I think
going
the first thing
on.
we should talk about is tonight, I think I have an idea.
Yeah,
Should one of us bring it home and us carve it, or do you think we should do it here on next Tuesday? I think we should, he's giving us some time, I think we should just do it here next Tuesday. What do you guys think?
Do we have, the whole,
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm gonna guess with him, I'm gonna guess it's gonna be more like an hour,
Well,
if I had to guess.
you will have, rather than
Just kinda usually
here.
goes on with things. But I think we should have a plan, so then if it's an hour or something like that, you know, we have it drawn out already all figured out.
No, I was thinking, you know,
But I'm gonna guess there's gonna be time, enough time to be able to.
pop flag.
If he can give us maybe a guesstimate for what one time.
You know what I mean?
Tired, I was like mounting up, there's sweat outside.
Really, it's very hard to design, but, and we can go in hard a full day. It's just like something for everybody else does. You guys, no, we're trying to couple times. Nothing serious though. We just need to know is that the design
It'll be on like peanut butter bread. It'll be on like peanut butter bread.
like we can bring it in.
You have to
Why not? Why not you?
It's not
you're gonna do
What's that?
Project manager.
Project manager. I mean, if you're okay with that.
Wasn't bad.
So what is that? What is that? So about on Tuesday next week, about how long do you think we will have to be able to carve a couple?
Yeah, I think we'll be good to go.
An hour? Yes. Three stick figure drawings. Statistically, okay. Sure.
A question was asked that's worth an answer. So as you're planning timelines and stuff, how much time on Tuesday will you have to complete your project? And so if paint's drying or something like that, the 9 o'clock deadline could be made and paint will dry overnight. I won't have any issue with that. We'll spend at least half the class on Tuesday on your project. So plan that, if that helps. At least half the class will be spent with you putting final touches on your project.
You got some tools? So, you guys got some ideas? I guess one thing I don't know, just kind of how you understood flag. Do you talk flag? I don't know. The beehive. What's my last one? 767. 8925. Here's good. Right. But maybe no, you're like you know. Right. Right. You know, like a work here, but like top beehive. Alright, are you guys? Are you guys pretty artistically inclined? Yeah.
I got the S22 Ultra also. Yeah. Got the S22 Ultra.
Yeah. Well, you can teach me how to run it, maybe.
Yeah, you can get one of these cases where you can set it up like this.
Yeah.
We have the same case. Hey, they're cool. You can take the wand out. You can pause play songs, like turn up the volume.
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah, you can literally take it out and go with this and turn down the volume.
Oh, yeah.
Switch back, you can screenshot.
No, I didn't know any of that. I got it.
There's a button.
Oh, look, okay. I knew there was a button, I didn't know what it was for.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should first.
Your own doesn't tend to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's ideas first. We can do something that's a long line of work.
Date was February 23rd, 1945.
Okay.
Happened.
February.
23rd, 1945.
Well, they have stuff.
I know that's fine. Were you? Yeah.
Oh,
I said were you, but yeah, where?
oh yeah, so I work for Toyota.
Wow. 20,000 Japanese troops were on the island and only 200 survived.
Japanese soldiers survived?
Japanese soldiers. Wow. Marines were badass. Let's put it that way.
So the first side we're doing the freedom statue, and the second side we're doing
Date?
date.
And that, since it's such a long date, we could do just do it 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Backup.
Right.
You know, so if something goes wrong, you know, we can kind of utilize bigger letters to kind of carve out the screw up parts, you know, and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So we got a date on one side and possibly a third side.
If you wanted to switch it up, you could do a tribute to Chesty Fuller.
What's that?
He is the most decorated Marine in history.
Okay. Does he have something that is identifiable?
His name, for one.
Right.
He eventually led the first Marine Corps on platoons and stuff like that. And he has 4 across his head.
Okay.
All of which should have been Congressional Medals of Honor because he did Marine style in my Navy Cross.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What's his name? Sorry.
Chesty Fuller.
Chesty?
Yep.
Is that with a Y or an IE?
Joined the Marine Corps when he was 17 years old, and he lied about his age. His first
To get in?
To get in. His first Navy Cross, he decked his commanding officer to control of 2 platoons, ran across the battlefield while taking battle to communicate the two fronts, and killed a whole bunch of people in Vietnam.
All right.
But he did it because they were taking fire, and his commanding officer was like, we're retreating. And he's like, well, what about our buddies over there? Huh, it's their problem.
All right then. No man left behind, right?
Yep.
So,
So he wanted like a signal, you know, to change it up, the project leadership.
right.
Chesty Fuller is a huge.
Is there a date associated with that also? Because we could do, like on the backside, we could just do Chesty Fuller and then like a numerical date underneath that.
Chesty Fuller and his
Is that more tricky?
born and
I guess
died.
I could definitely
Right.
Is that more tricky than fully cutting into it or whatever?
That's an alternative if we wanted to look into doing something like that.
Sure.
Because you can do like the process. Configurations if you want to go into it.
Right, right.
So the mountain that the Iwo is on was Mount Suribachi, and I guess we could do a skyline of the mountain on the
Okay.
inside.
How do you spell Suribachi?
Oh, it's got the yeah.
And I don't know if that's Japanese because I don't know Japanese.
So one thing that we're gonna run into if we do too much is we're gonna have the risk of something going flat way fast. Right?
So it'd be on Monday, turn it in on Tuesday, I think.
Well, that's not gonna work. She's gonna have to carve it.
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, I should probably carve it Sunday.
I'll be coming back from Salt Lake, so I could be available.
Right.
By phone and or after I get back.
Do you have a phone number or an email that we can send updates to?
Yeah, so my phone number is 434-260-9117.
9117.
Yes.
I'll get that from you. We could do the Iwo Jima on the front, the date that it happened on the side, and then we could list the Marines' names. They do have the names.
Okay.
So that way it's easier to carve because it's just a lot of letters. It would retain the structural stability.
Okay.
Oh, that's actually.
Especially if you use like the military font where it's like stencil.
Now, see, these are original. I like that.
Yeah, so like a baker, how to use it.
There we go. There's I like that one a lot.
Well, does it still have to be a physical company? And it's the account, sorry. The question I could ask him. Deadline.
So I just started a group chat, and we can communicate there. I can send visual updates.
I'll need those because I'll include those.
Yeah, I'll send them out throughout the day as she's carving.
I think that's.
What else, boss?
So are we carving all of this, or are we painting some of it, or?
Well, we need to, I think that we should decide on a definite front and with two optional sides, right? So we have a lot of ideas. I think that we are decided on the front, right, which is the Iwo Jima statue. So now we just need to decide specifically on what are we going to do an additional carve. If we are, which one of these that we talked about are we going to go with? Because that's going to be questions that she's going to ask me, what do you want, what does it look like, and I think that before we leave tonight, we should have definitive what we're going to do.
I guess we could take like pictures of the pumpkin basically and kind of just, not like Photoshop them, but like, put the pictures kind of on the pumpkin.
Do you have experience with that?
No, but I can try.
I don't have any experience with that.
I can have us paint it.
I can try.
Right.
And I can Photoshop it. At home.
Okay.
Hold on a
Okay.
second.
That would be great. We would just need to have something definitive again by Sunday. It would be better if we could have something definitive by Saturday, because then I could. Well, it would be preferable because then I could take it home and she could have the maximum amount of time to figure it out, right? And she's got a Cricut, and she will do a stencil and then overlay the stencil before she carves.
So
You know
she
what I mean?
would carve it Saturday or Sunday?
She would carve it. Well, I would ask her to carve it Sunday.
Sunday.
There you go. You got Photoshop. Well, that's fantastic. And she'll go to town on it, and she'll be very detail oriented. She's got all the Cricut tools, little scrapers, little carvers, all that stuff. And then how detailed. I guess first we need to decide what we're gonna do, right?
Right.
So let's start there. Oh no. Sign right there.
And then spin it.
180.
Like the Apple ecosystem. system is good, it should have those pictures over here. Emailed it to me, so.
And then we're gonna put a light in it, right? So we're gonna have a candle. Yeah, I can go and grab that. I'll get the
So do you want the statue or do you want an actual photograph? The Rosenthal photograph. What's the difference?
No, you thought it was, right?
Three devices. So that's the statue.
Uh-huh.
Photograph would be more like lights and darks. That's photograph.
Right.
The photograph might be better because, like you said, you get the lights and the darks.
Let's do the photograph, because, yeah, lights and darks.
That's gotta take. How is that coming out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The darks will illuminate and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think me, I like the two. No, that's the two. Having sweet bones and that string.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Right. Participation trophy.
Oh, she's got Friday off and Monday off. So she's gonna have plenty of time to figure it out, try new things.
How much of this battery would you want to keep?
Well, I don't know. How do we get it to fit?
We let me do my Photoshop magic.
All right, we will let you do the Photoshop magic.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, where's the
Not too much material. I like pumpkin pie.
So do I. It's kind of a crude.
I think it works, you know?
It's kind of concept.
And we could do something where you could get like a flag and kind of put it in their hands, but it could be a real flag.
Yeah.
You know?
So just kind of have like the whole sleeve,
Uh-huh.
you know, so that it slides through.
Yep.
You'd have to do like a relief cut so that it would cut into the and go in at the right angle.
Yep.
You know, I use the terms that you all know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great.
Steve, I'm way better with AMS and mouse and beat my PC.
Right, right, right.
Roughly.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So do we want to put like the date of it?
We could put the date right here.
Yeah.
There, or spin it and put the date in the back.
I
Or do you want all of it to be in
I think it would be better if it's all here because we have a large
a large area?
empty area right there.
And the other things are different too.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Where's the where's the base gonna be at?
Do we want like the numbers or actually February 24th, 1940?
I think it would be.
I've done this a time or two.
What's that?
I've done this a time or two.
Yeah. We could do February 24th, and then on the second line do the year. Yep.
I've never installed a font on it, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, do we wanna have this side being the front, kind of still has, follow the exercise? Team effort, man, they're throwing input, throwing output, you know? But this does already have some updates going.
I get a better discount now than before.
Is it 23rd, 24th? I can't remember.
I think you said 24th.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, having a short yeah, the freaking going, doing a, because I've noticed that here in St. George is more and more, clientele for,
23rd. Yeah, 23rd.
It's starting to grow a lot. Starting to grow a lot. Every place that I have seen a well-absorbed type thing, especially when I just kind of pop up.
And so for the cricket, is she gonna need these photos separate from the pumpkin too?
Doesn't get a lot, I see.
She'll find them. Yeah, I mean, she will take from this photo
Right, but then,
and
Kind of use her liberties to get it to fit correctly.
Right.
You know, whatever.
yeah.
The photo that I saved, I cut it all out so she can actually use that, put it into her Cricut, and then, you know, cut the outside edges.
Yeah.
So she could wrap it and trace wherever it's at.
Yep.
That's a great idea.
She loves that thing, dude. And we might be able to. She might be able to. Well, I think that might be a little much. I was gonna say, you know, do an epoxy dip on it to keep it fresh forever.
Obviously that would be negative, so.
Right.
Go in. I guess I could turn it orange if you wanted me to.
No, I just leave it like that. I think she can figure that out. So are we decided then? That is going to be the carve?
It looks good.
All right.
Interesting stuff going on with the relief cut.
Yeah.
Maybe she could save some of the pumpkins that you put in and then slide back in and glue that piece back in place.
Mm-hmm.
Have it so it goes through.
Right, so it's not pointing out at us, but out, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can make that work. Okay. If you can email that to me,
Which email?
just use the Wilding one. That's fine.
Never sent an email.
and then, you wanna just send that in the group chat?
Yes, I'll give updates. I'll give a beginning, a quarterly, a halfway, 3/4, and a final. Just so that he can have it as part of the presentation. I will probably include photos of me and my son, whatever we're doing that day, in order to facilitate a quiet house for carving.
I'll include some photos with me at Fun Finger Death Punch.
There you go.
Just so you guys know.
All right. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, 77.2 megs big. I'm sorry, it doesn't go through.
Okay.
Easy turnaround.
Let me shrink it to size.
I was thinking.
I'm gonna get this done today.
What's that?
I'm gonna get this done today.
Well, I mean, you still got a couple days, right?
And I have the technology in a remote.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And then you're selling these cones and little birds.
So do we need
I should go through now.
Okay.
2.2 megs now instead of 77.2.
All right, even better.
No, you're good. Do we need the materials we're using, like slide? Did it say? I kind of missed the first.
So there's three. I figured what I do on the presentation is I would break it down into three individual mini slides, and maybe 3 slides in one.
Okay.
So that way it's not a huge presentation. We had the three E's, so like the planning, building, construction, whatever.
The carving. Yeah.
And so I could put pictures of the carving, into it.
Right.
And then I could put pictures of the building construction phase. So take some pictures of your wife making these things.
Right.
And then we'll just do kind of a generalized base for 3 slides. What we're doing here.
Sure.
The planning phase, and this, so I will need the notes as to when the estimated timeline is going to be.
Okay. So when do you want to have the presentation? presentation done by?
Well, I'm gonna have a huge amount of time on Tuesday, once I get to the hotel.
Okay, next week?
Next week. But I can work on it when I'm on Friday night.
Right. So it would be better if we had it before Tuesday, in case we have an opportunity to present. So
If we can present, I mean, like I said, I'll do the presentation.
are you gonna be here on Tuesday though?
It's Tuesday, but it's the following Thursday. I'll work Tuesday.
Hey, are we doing the presentation next Tuesday or the following Tuesday? So 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Cool.
Once you guys do the actual presentation,
Right.
I'll have a whole week that I can
Yeah.
Do it.
build,
Okay.
send edits, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's perfect. So you'll have it done by the 25th.
Yes.
And you'll have plenty of time to work on that on the 18th.
Plenty of time between now and
And that contract doesn't expire.
Thursday, since I have nothing to do.
I'd like you to wrap up your planning conversation in about 5 minutes. So at 7:45,
Okay.
if you could be at a spot where you can stop, that'd be great.
Yes. That's fantastic.
So sorry, what's your name again?
Jake.
I'm really bad at names.
Same with us.
So it's actually
I talk to customers all day long, so I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I used to work in a hotel checking so many people, so you know.
yes, it's exactly it's in that building. Yeah. Yeah. And
The sheet font, or with if I told her to get some font out,
Yeah, she can find it.
it's just Army and House fonts.
What is it? Army?
It's called Army. The font's called Army.
Okay.
It's fonts for web.
Okay.
So
Okay. Write that down.
it's just the standard military.
Yeah, she may already have it. She's got all kinds of different fonts. I mean, obviously, when you're making shirts, doing cups, you know.
That's why I get fonts all the time. So my wife wants me to make stickers for things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My wife is astonished how quickly I can throw something like that together. I've been working with Photoshop since Photoshop.
Right. Yeah. As you get comfortable with it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
How long did that take?
So first side we're doing the freedom statue and the date of it. And then are we doing the trustee board side?
No.
No?
That was just an alternative.
Yeah.
With the leadership concept, and I know a lot about trustee board.
Right.
Gotcha.
I didn't think I wanted to send them, but actually was
You do military?
never made the cut.
Yeah.
Like 6 months after all this, they raised the target.
Right. Yeah, I tried. They said no to me too because I had a juvenile marijuana possession charge. Yeah. Which sucks because probably would have been a lot better for me than the other alternatives, right?
Just don't get the no recruits stuff too.
Right. Okay. I think we're ready. Any other questions, boss?
Nope.
All right.
Right now.
Do you have
Okay.
Photoshop?
I do not.
So I would have to figure out a way to, I guess I can always save it in slides, PSD, not PSD, PDF, so you can view it.
Right. Okay.
I'll figure it out.
All right.
text you.
Yeah, I started a group text.
No, not like through the roof, but before they would be 23, 26. Now they're.
You definitely have my number because you texted me.
Yes, I have your number. Yes.
And then what are you using for slides? Are you using slides?
It'll be PowerPoint. So you could go if you have a Hotmail account or a Messenger account. You could sign your slides with like 10 minutes. But I think I said save it as
Oh, and then you
you'd get
send it.
so you'd see
Like that, basically. Okay.
as you can tell, I'm a pretty good tech guy.
Yeah.
I can figure out how to send it to people.
Right. Okay, do you want my email now then?
I'll ask for one text and it's easier enough for me just to go to college.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. It's long too, so.
All right.
Maybe as long as ours at wallbedsbywild.com.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
I wish they'd buy a W.
Probably thousands of dollars. Well, they tried to trademark Wallbeds by Wilding, or Wilding. Sorry, Wilding Wallbeds. But there's some dude in Florida
Has the domain.
that has the domain and has that trademark name. That's why we're Wallbeds by Wilding, not Wilding Wallbeds. Yep. Yeah. And we tried to buy it from him and he said, nope. Nope.
So for the presentation, so you saw my presentation last time. It was kind of that, it's kind of clean, which is kind of line and all that kind of
I
stuff.
don't think I was here for your presentation.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll just choose like a template design that I kind of like.
Uh-huh.
Hit you guys up with, hey, this is what
Sure.
I don't like these things all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that worked.
My presentation was, it looked okay.
Right.
All the slides were uniform because I had that.
Right. All right.
What were the ings again? Planning?
So,
Planning, carving, building.
We'll probably do it. Planning, building, Carwell, station 41
Yeah. Yeah.
so did you make the group chat yet? Because I only got a text from you.
Maybe I used the wrong Jake.
Oh, maybe.
Do you know more than one Jake?
I do. Well, there's. Oh, it's just a name. All right, hold on one second. That's why. Okay. Smith. 2609117.
And if she does it on Sunday, I can like cruise over and help and stuff like that, or even stop by and help for social and stuff like that.
Right. Sure.
I'm not opposed to it. I just been extremely tired. So.
Right. Well, what will happen is I'll show her what we're trying to do. We'll plan it out, and then
you take some photos and document that planning process.
Sure.
And that way I can
Yeah. So either what will happen is either me and my son will carve pumpkins while she's carving this one, or we will go do something and get him out of the house so she can focus on what she's doing. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up with a couple of thoughts on terms and
What's that?
deliverables, since deliverables is what this is about.
Not one. that
You have to
denied.
know what the
He has one, but it's
deliverables
too big.
are. We're gonna watch a
And
couple of
hand-me-down.
videos before we're done with class tonight. You can stay where you are, you can go back to where you started. Doesn't matter, we're just gonna watch a couple of 9-minute videos and have a little discussion about it, and we will be done. Deliverables first.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Witt, Project Director for ProjectManager.com. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a deliverables diagram saves 1,000,000 meetings. So today what we want to talk about is the deliverables diagram for a project. So I'm sure this looks familiar. The actual project life cycle, initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. And one of the most important things to know is the actual deliverables that are required to come into this process and the critical deliverables coming out. So today what we're going to talk about is the deliverables for each phase. We're going to talk about the inputs, we're going to talk about the outputs and how valuable they are. The deliverables diagram sets a vision for not only for the project manager, but also for the team and the stakeholders, so everyone knows where are we going, how are we going to get there, and what's due when.
Pause for just a second. Those of you that have studied Lean and are studying Lean, this is also called the SIPOC diagram. So if you've heard the word SIPOC, it's supplier inputs, process outputs, and customer. And so it's adding the supplier and customer to the top and bottom of this project management diagram. So many companies teach Lean, and SIPOC is a very important part of Lean structure as you're looking at what you're doing internally in the organization. So it's very similar to what she's talking about here, which is within the project itself.
So the important deliverables for initiating is the business opportunity and really knowing why are we even doing this project. So many times we get in the thrust of a project and everyone is so focused on their task that they actually forget why are we doing this project and what is the main deliverable coming out from this project. So we submit a business opportunity actually from the business, and it can come in from many different directions for many reasons, but the business opportunity identifies why we're doing the project. So that's the main input coming into the initiating process. So the process of working with the stakeholders and critical team members, take that information and they process it, and from the output of that becomes the project charter. Many people today may call that something different in their companies. It may be a statement of work, it could be an estimate response document, it could be called a proposal or anything. But that's the main document coming out that identifies what's the scope, what's the timeline, a high-level timeline, and what's the high-level budget of this project. Then the project charter feeds into the next phase, the planning phase. So the project charter and the lessons learned. It's very important to share the lessons learned, even if it's not the same type project, a similar type project, lessons learned that we can glean things to actually improve performance of this project. So the project charter and the lessons learned feed into the planning process, including all the important stakeholders and people on the planning team, get that information, and from there is produced the project plan. And from the project plan, all the sub-plans that identify the deliverables diagram. Again, it's very important to identify a picture for the team, not only for the project manager, but the team and the stakeholders to say what's going to be done when and what's going to be delivered. So a very important document, deliverables diagram, communications plan. Communications plan is very important. One of the issues that I see over many teams is the communication plan and knowing what level of information needs to be communicated to the right level of person. As we know, the project team needs to know information totally different than the executive committee or the stakeholders or the change control board. It's different levels of information, so it's important to identify who needs to know what, when, and how. So in today's times, people get so many emails, so some people now are texting information, the beauty of the mobile market and the texting, or even collaborative software, or collaborative systems. People are using now social media. So it's important to identify how the team needs that information. Do they need it real time, or how do they need it best? As well as the risk and issues, knowing what risk or how are we going to manage risk. If risk occurs, how are we going to identify them, how are we going to mitigate them, and who are the actual decision makers that make those important decisions for us. And the issues, how are we going to manage and track issues? At what point are we going to escalate those, and who are the important decision makers? And then the change management process. We all know change will happen, and so it's important to know up front what is the process we're going to use to manage those changes. How are those changes going to come in? How are they going to be assessed? And who are the people who need to decide how we're going to manage those changes? And then procurement. How are we going to procure our resources and the assets we need for the team? Are we going to actually get those from in-house? Are we going to use those from important vendor partners? What is the process that needs to be done? What are the approval levels that need to be made at what time? As well as the cost management. How are we going to manage cost? How are we going to measure the cost? And so it's important to know up front these important things. And then the schedules. How are we going to manage the schedule? As we know, we're going to baseline the schedule, we're going to baseline all of these things, and then but what happens when the schedule changes? How are we going to manage that? So those are the important sub-plans identified in the project plan, and that's why it's so valuable. It actually becomes the game plan or the execution plan that feeds into now the executing and controlling phase of the project. So once we now have the project charter, because we want the project charter, actually remember, maintains the baseline, the agreement and approval for this project, and what the project is, what the budget is, and the important stakeholders. Again, really keeping us in line of why are we even doing this project. We find that so many projects fail because people aren't tracking the baseline against the original charter, the original plan. And that's what taking the charter and the plan, taking that into executing and controlling, actually executing that, and from there becomes the performance reports. So now we take the performance reports and we measure those against baselines to know where are we in the progress of the project, and what are the things that we need to do using the project plan. How do we get those things back in line so we're now meeting the original goal? And if we're not meeting the original goal, what are the steps we need to take to actually change it, modify the baseline, and get the appropriate approvals? And if we do that, we actually find that we can decrease the project failure rate by actually implementing project management best practices. Then the issues and risk logs. So again, important to not only track them, but log the risk or the issues that occur. So we know when they occurred, what are the issues that occurred, what are the risks that occurred, what action did we take, and who actually approved or signed off on the action to be taken. Then the change logs. As we know, we said change will occur, so actually logging what change did occur when and what decisions were made, who made the decisions. And then the project progress, knowing how are we doing against the baseline of the project. And then the deliverables. So at this point, the executing and controlling, we're now actually producing the deliverables for the project. So we can actually begin, of all the deliverables that get made, the ultimate deliverable is the actual project. So the performance reports, the project progress, the project logs and deliverables, as the project comes to a close, all feed into the closing part of the project. So saving the best for last, but not forgotten, the closing phase actually is very important to get the product acceptance from the users, the stakeholders, the agreement that the project actually did meet the intent of the project and all of the baseline or performance measures that had to be met, the final and actual reports of how do we do against the baseline and how do we actually measure on this project, the project documents so that we're actually archiving, saving, maintaining the documentation, the historical, the history of this project. So if we need to revisit again what happened and when, and if we need to take that information to the next phase of a project, or maybe even a subsequent or similar project. And then the lessons learned. Always knowing what lessons did we learn, what did we glean, what do we want to take forward, because as we know, it's going to feed back into the next project. So again, we feel like if a picture is worth 1,000 words, it's going to save 1,000,000 meetings in project management. So if you need any other additional tips, tools, techniques, or templates, please visit us at projectmanager.com.
So deliverables on a project can make or break the project. You can have a project that's working well, and the deliverables are falling apart, and in fact, the project is not going to happen, or it's problematic. I was in a project management meeting this morning on another entity outside the college, and the project is to bring a device lab up in vitro diagnostics in Uganda. And that project is 6 months behind right now, and it's completed, all the construction's completed, the laboratory is functional, it meets sterile requirements, everything is right except the deliverables, the written part is not. And what we found out in the meeting this morning is that these report outs that were required, the company, the project is 49% owned by a U.S. corporation, 51% owned by a Uganda corporation. If you don't know where Uganda is, it's the middle of Africa. If you know Lake Victoria, it's the big lake, it's right by that. And so it's a hard to get to place, it's hard to communicate with place. And we found out that the team that was actually building the sterilization process in the lab that's required by U.S. law and required for CE mark for European certification of the lab, the project manager is reporting out to the tribal chief in a language meeting. And I didn't know that until now. We're expecting documents back. The documents were never created. They were verbally reported to the chief, who's not even in on the project. He's just the tribal chief in the area of the team that's working on this. Didn't see that coming. That's failure to project management on me. That's a deliverable that I thought was understood by everybody, and it was done, but it was done to a person that I had no idea was in the loop, and to a stakeholder that I had no idea that the tribe was interested in the success of this lab for national purposes, for the country, and I didn't see that coming. That's a fail. We've got to, that's not okay. We've got to figure this stuff out. And so no matter how schooled we get at project management, a curveball like that can hit us. That one set us back, will cost money, and it's just not okay for me to have even been on the team. That should have been, we should have gotten that figured out. How? Through a trial, through a sample where the stakes are low. Let's carve a pumpkin and do the paperwork. And if you can't do the paperwork for a pumpkin, you're not going to do it for a molecular diagnostic lab. So doing simulations like we're doing here in class, where it gets us practice of, oh, this is what you call a document? That's not what we call a document. The FDA won't take that. The FDA won't take a little affidavit that says, I promise I talked to the chief. That's not going to work for the United States Food and Drug Administration. So I'm not belittling. I'm just saying that curveballs on that one, I have to step up and take the hit on that. I was the point on that. And so that has to get fixed. And could get fixed a couple of different ways. I could get ousted of the project, right? That might be, if incompetence was declared, that's a reasonable plan. You fire the coach, if the team's not winning, not getting it done. Or you can put a plan in place to fix it. And I won't get into that. It's proprietary and a mess, and it's my fault. So as much as we try, we've got to watch for places where risk can get us, where miscommunication can get us. These reportables from a project are vital. So let me give you one more from the same lady about terminology, because on class on next Tuesday, we are going to go into these terms from our book, 19 terms. most of which you scan through and you go, okay, I understand all that. We defined a project already, that a project is a non-recurring task, right? It's something that has to be done right, the stakes are reasonably high, but it's not gonna be done again in the short term. If we're building a house every day like Salisbury is in town, that's not a project anymore, that's their business, that's what they're doing. And so if they're only doing it once, then it's a custom home, it's a project. So project management, value of the project, we talked about that a little bit. We'll talk about these all specifically, but I want to show you operation management, portfolio management, program management. What is the difference? And I just want to leave with this idea that many companies have a lot of irons in the fire. And so they may have 5 different, we were talking at break about Zarnowski as a company here in town that does trade show exhibits. And each trade show exhibit is like a one-time trade show. Next year it'll be different. It may even be a different place. Jacob Javits Center in New York City, or it may be, in New Orleans or wherever it may be. It's a different venue, and the trade show exhibit has to be different. LA, for example, and Las Vegas both have to be, every trade show exhibit has to be earthquake proof, which means if the building goes under an earthquake during the show, and there's 20,000 conventioners there at the show, that the trade show exhibit that you just erected on a little, easy up thing doesn't fall on people. So it has to be suspended from the ceiling. So the ceiling is structurally strong in both of those convention centers in Orange County and in Las Vegas. So all your trade show exhibits have to be hung from the ceiling. So Zarnowski has maybe, they do the Consumer Electronics Show, the Automotive Show, they've got Fiat, they've got Chevrolet as clients, Audi as a client here in St. George. And so they've got different project managers doing each one of those things. And some are called projects, some are called program, and the whole thing's under portfolio. And I'll explain that to you, how that all works, because you may actually be a project manager that's a portfolio manager. You may be in charge of all the automotive related exhibits that Zarnowski is doing worldwide. They've got facilities like in St. George, other places, and they've got portfolio managers that are managing that portfolio business for them. So we have contractors doing the same kind of thing. They build airports. They're building 10 airports in 10 different places in the world. And you may be the portfolio manager, because there's a lot of similarities in those, but there's also potentially differences each one. So they each have project managers with different deadlines, different local rules, the different chiefs of the tribe that they got to coordinate with and talk to. So we'll talk about those next class on Tuesday. We're going through all 19 of those. That's still in chapter 1 of your textbook. So you have that PDF online and descriptions of it. If you want to take a sneak peek, we can go through that. The last thing we want to talk about today is some of these terms, a video, and we will be done for the day. This will go 4 minutes over maybe. I'll cut it off over there.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Witt, Director of ProjectManager.com. Well, welcome to our whiteboard session today on terms that project managers use. Today I'm going to talk about my top 10, and hopefully they'll be helpful. I want to point you to a resource that I think is very helpful. This is the Guide to Project Management Body of Knowledge by PMI, the Project Management Institute. There are other resources out there. You can certainly Google some of these terms too, but it's important coming into project management, whether you're new to project management coming in, or maybe you're on and off as the project manager. But there are several terms that project managers use. Again, this is not the end-all be-all. These are just some common terms that sometimes get twisted and misused sometimes. So I want to clarify some of these. So the first one is, you may hear WBS. When I came on board as a project manager, I thought, what in the world is that, a WBS? And some people called them the WBS. I'm like, what's a WBS or a WBS? So it's actually a work breakdown structure. So a work breakdown structure is, it's hierarchical, and it breaks down the work, and it's deliverables oriented, and it really defines the scope of the project. So the work breakdown structure keeps breaking different components down to show all the work, again, that produces deliverables and in essence is the total scope of the project. Number 2 is a milestone. So you hear different milestones, you hear different points on the schedule. So this is a significant point in time or event that's on your schedule. Sometimes you'll see them marked as like a black diamond, and again that indicates a milestone on your project. Sometimes a good best practice for project managers is once you hit a milestone on time, that's a great cause for celebration. I always use those to celebrate something significant being done. Number 3 is a baseline. So this to me is where a project can become a failed project or successful project, because in the beginning of the project it's important to, once the plan is approved by the Change Control Board, is to baseline it. So you're in essence approving the plan, the project plan, which also includes the project schedule. And so what happens is during the project, of course, changes are always going to occur. Changes to the time, the scope, the budget, and the quality. So as long as you take those changes to a CCB, which we'll talk about later, to get approved, then they're giving you approval to rebaseline the project. And that's approval to make changes. So if your schedule is elongated, maybe it's delayed for some time, if you get the appropriate approval and rebaseline, to me that again is the difference between a failed or successful project. So very important. The other is a triple constraint. So the little twist about a triple constraint is there are 4 components of the triple constraint. It's usually indicated by a triangle. So there it's balancing the time, the cost, the scope, and the quality of your project. So with the triple constraint, as these things occur, specifically around changes, so the time, if you increase the time, it might and will impact at least one of these other components. So it's always managing these things so you keep your project on track. And these things are the things that you look at when you take things to the CCB, your Change Control Board. Number 5 is a project life cycle. So there are many different types of project life cycles. This is a single phase life cycle. This is the one indicated by PMI, the Project Management Institute. Again, it's a single phase, and so there are initiating processes that occur that feed the planning processes, and at the same time, so once your project begins executing, the executing processes, monitoring and controlling processes begin to occur throughout the project, and then once the project is completed, you hit your closing processes. So that is a project life cycle: initiating, planning, monitoring and controlling, executing, and closing the project. Number 6 is a Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart is a tool. It's a graphical display of the schedule information. So if you look at your work breakdown structure in your tool that you use, you can look at your work breakdown structure. It includes dates and durations for tasks to be completed or deliverables to be produced. And then the CCB. So when I came on board as a project manager, I kept hearing about a CCB. I thought, what is a CCB? So it stands for the Change Control Board. So the Change Control Board is a group of stakeholders. So it's not all of the stakeholders, it's representatives from the stakeholder groups. And they are on your board. They're the people who are designated in your project plan, who are the people with the authority to make approval or denials for things. So they review changes, they evaluate them, they approve them, they delay them or reject changes on your project. So these are the people with the authority. What I love about this is it takes the pressure off of project managers. I see many times where project managers try to take upon themselves to make these decisions, and it's not for the project manager to make. It's for the project manager to have the processes in place, get the processes in place for the changes to be fed to the Change Control Board and really facilitate that process. And again, it's the CCB's responsibility for making those decisions. And then the stakeholders again. So who is a stakeholder? So the stakeholders include people or organizations. It could be your customers, it could be your clients, it could be your vendor partners, it could be different organizations, and they're actively involved. So it's important that they're actively involved and they interact and may be positive or negatively affected by the execution of the project. So they have a vested interest. So these people who are deemed the stakeholders, again, they're engaged in something that's being done on the project. Is usually to assist them with something that they need, and they certainly don't want any negative impacts. The other one is the change management. So many times there is confusion on managing change and change management. They sound similar, but change management is about, it's a project management plan, so it includes the processes on who does what, when, and where, related to the changes on the projects. And this project management plan is to control the scope, versus managing change is typically associated with managing change of a project. So a project is initiated or executed, and it's going to infiltrate different organizations or groups of the corporation, and that change is going to have some trigger emotional behaviors of the company. So there are many organizations that focus on managing the change, and they come in and help the organizations do the communications, the planning for the people, so that it doesn't cause mass chaos when that project is implemented. Risk mitigation versus risk management. So again, like risk management is the plan. So risk mitigation is important because it's different than risk identification. It's important to identify risk, and people on the project sometimes are really good about identifying risk, specifically at the beginning of the project, but it's important to identify those all along the way. But more importantly, is not just identifying the risk, but coming up with a mitigation strategy. So the risk mitigation is about building a risk response. It's a risk response planning technique associated with threats to the project. So if these risks that are identified occur, you need to know like what happens next. So if you just identify them and then those threats do occur on the project, then you're like, oh no, if you don't have the mitigation strategy and this occurs, then it just takes up time. It can cause a failed project by taking too much time, or you're not prepared. Maybe you need specific resources, maybe you need specific equipment or something that is not easy to access. So to have that in place, to know how to do that. But the idea is to reduce the probability of that risk occurring, or reducing the impact if it does occur. So to me, these are some of the top 10 to know and know the differences between, and help you in your project coming on board as a project manager.
So I'm pretty sure as we wrap it up, that business about change management and change control board kind of confused you a little bit, but we'll talk about that a bit. Change management is the biggest place for you to lose money. If you are, and we'll talk a lot about that at length, why that is, but the facts are, customer expected the beams to be blue, and you didn't get that, but you could pay them blue, it's no big deal, but you didn't bid it that way. That's a change from when you've accepted the down payment on the order, the purchase order, and all that stuff, and now the guys in the shop got to paint it blue. And so that, now that's a whole new cost that wasn't planned on. Managing change internally with the organization is critical. Exploiting change for the co is a good place to make money, and it's a great place to lose money. So we'll talk quite a bit about that. The celebration of the milestones, the last thing we'll talk about today. We look at different places within a project. The longer the project, the more we need to celebrate milestones. It helps keep the stakeholders on board on a longer term project. In the structural steel business, which we've got a couple people from S&S Steel here, structural steel kind of has a ceremony. They call it topping out ceremony. When the steel erectors are building the building and they put all the beams together, the last beam to go on is called topping out. And you've seen them. You saw one on the new county building on Main Street or
Tabernacle.
Where, downtown. I don't know what streets it's on. You saw that beam hanging there for at least a week, and it had a Christmas tree on one end and it had American flag on the other. And you go, what's the story with that? Well, when it's a ceremony, it's a celebration. And when we put the beam on this building, the topping out ceremony, the mayor was here. They usually paint the beam white. They usually have dignitaries sign the beam, the people that are paying, the people that have been working on the project, the crane operator, everybody signs that beam. And that beam is in this stairwell over here. If you go up instead of down, you look up, the beam is now painted gray due to an error. They painted over everybody's signatures, but I think it's just hilarious. But anyway, that's what they did. And that was not managing a change very well. Typically, that becomes, that's an event because the building's far from done. You're just putting the last piece of steel in. You got all this work left ahead of you, and people are fatiguing. They're wondering, is this project going on? I see it being, but what's going on? So you have celebrations in your project. And topping off is just an example of one for a steel building. We may have a celebration on your pumpkin carving. If you know where the milestones are, celebrate a milestone because you just finished something on your project that was important to the project. So with that, I'm over time. 4 minutes, as I predicted. Sorry about that, but the trade-off is you don't have to come to class Thursday. Enjoy that. I hope your pumpkin carving goes well. If you have questions, let me know. I will see you 1 week from tonight, 1 hour to finish up your pumpkin, and then we'll talk about project management.